Okay, we continue onwards with plants. We left off looking at desert modifications, plants that are adapted for living in harsh, dry climates. We talked about having thorns and spines for protection, and then we ended up with the idea of having biochemicals. Now, utilizing biochemicals as an anti-parasitic, anti-predatory type of defense. So we're going to kind of continue with that theme, looking at plants and their ecological role, a lot of the co-evolutionary processes that have happened between plants and other organisms. So we can kind of talk about the idea of co-evolution. Like plants have co-evolved with different species of animals. Plants have then co-evolved to have animals help pollinate. Plants have co-evolved with other predatory or parasitic forms of animals to produce new chemicals that hinder some of the parasitic interactions. So lots of ecology between humans and plants over the history of our species, right? So we know that plants can be utilized as food. Maybe some of you are vegetarian, so you rely solely on plants for nutrition, vegan, plants as a very fundamental food resource. We know that plants and these new biochemicals that they start to produce can be utilized as both medicines and poisons. And there's a kind of a fine line between the two. So when we talk about a poison, this is a substance that must be ingested to cause some sort of negative effect. So if I say a snake is venomous, that's correct. If I say a snake is poisonous, it's typically not the correct vocabulary term, right? The snake, a scorpion, a wasp, those would be venomous. They have a way of injecting the toxin. Plants and mushrooms, they would be poisonous. We have to actually ingest them for them to cause their physiological harm. So medicine would be then that biochemical having some beneficial, some positive effect on our health. So again, plants of different species falling under the idea of food, of medicine, or of poison. So again, entering now the idea of pharmacology, where these, in the old days, these medicine women, medicine men, these shaman would then have a good knowledge of their plant species in the local area. They know, well, if I eat this leaf, it's gonna make my headache go away. If I eat this leaf, ooh, it's gonna cause me to have a stomach ache, things like that. So this is the beginning of pharmaceutical, of botany, of a huge, basically a field of study, right? So we're not gonna get into that much detail today, but just understand there's a rich history of interaction between humans and plants. Very small list. We could spend the whole semester just looking at this idea of plants and the biochemicals that are utilized by humans, right? So here we have an idea of the plant type, plant species, the quinine, the opium, eucalyptus, foxglove, belladonna, and the biochemical that's derived or produced naturally from that plant. So, and then over here we see some of the uses. You might be familiar with the eucalyptus tree, right? Eucalyptus producing menthol. And if you're familiar with Vicks, maybe a lot of your grandparents believe very heavily in Vicks. You have a sore throat, your chest hurts, whatever. Oh, they start to use Vicks for different purposes. So that's an actual naturally produced substance from plants, from the eucalyptus tree. Cough medicines, things like that. Again, I'm not going to get into all the specifics. You can kind of read here, but for the opium producing things like morphine, right? Heroin. So a lot of medications and or poison / sort of recreational or illegal drugs, narcotics, can be derived from these plants. And if we analyze it from the plant's perspective, the plant didn't wake up in the morning, oh, I gotta make this chemical to make the humans cough feel better, or to help them escape reality and get high, that kind of stuff. That's not the primary role that the plants are considering. The plants wake up in the morning thinking, I have to survive, right? I have to fend off any predators, any parasites that are going to injure my tissue. So they start to produce these biochemicals to have some sort of ecological impact on predators or parasites. So it's a survival mechanism by plants producing these chemicals. And through the process of evolution, selection, these chemicals become more refined, more potent over time. Yep. So again, some more examples there. So we know that there's a whole field of study, there's a whole concept, there's a whole idea that why should we study plants, especially like in rainforests? Why should we know what plants are there before that rainforest gets chopped down? Well, who knows? Maybe there's some little plant that doesn't look like much like this one, doesn't look that interesting, but within this plant is that chemical that we call Taxol that is an anti-cancer drug. Right? So Mother Nature has produced a biochemical that naturally fends off ovarian cancer. So pretty big deal there. We're going to get into some recreational type drugs. I'm going to upload a couple of videos to accompany this, but I suspect a lot of you have friends that partake of this kind of stuff, and those friends have pets maybe. So just as humans can sort of become addicted to some of these biochemicals, other animals as well can do so. So domesticated animals seem to have similar impacts or physiological responses when their owners are smoking or utilizing marijuana. So you can see these little dogs, wow, they're flying high, these little guys, gonna get the munchies soon there. We know that elephants seem to like this type of biochemical. They seek out this species, the marula tree, right? So these fruits become fermented, causing basically some physiological response in the brain of the elephant. So they will go out of their way, miles and miles, searching for these types of fermented fruits there. Other weeds that basically occur naturally can become toxic to these animals. Domesticated horses can become addicted to some of these toxic plants and causing very, very detrimental effects on their health. And not plant related, this is a mushroom, but again, similar biochemicals seem to attract reindeers, right? So these reindeers are focused in on finding these particular biochemicals. We don't know if it's for the hallucinogenic type of property, or maybe they just taste good, maybe they have some sort of nutritive value for them. But again, not just a human or primate neurological effect. We see this in other species as well. So again, keep an eye out for some videos that address different biochemicals. And again, everything that's on your exam should be covered here. And last but not least, I just have a few slides left to discuss the predatory plants. So we go off in a very, very different tangent here, right? So predatory plants, you may be familiar with the Venus flytrap, maybe the Sundew plant, pitcher plants. So it seems kind of strange, maybe a little bit greedy. Why would a plant who can photosynthesize and feed off of light shift its diet now to insects? Right? Why would a plant have to become a predator in order to survive? Well, for most of these predatory plants, the simple answer is nitrogen. Most of these plants live in very poor quality soils where there's not a lot of decomposition in this stagnant, very boggy type of environments. So nutrients are not recycled very often. So if you are lacking this nutrient, nitrogen, well, you're not going to get it from the soil. You have to have another source for acquiring it. And if you can't get it from the soil and you can't acquire it elsewhere, you're going to basically die. So again, the coevolutionary process over time, plants have figured out a way to get nitrogen from insects. Nitrogen is very abundant in the atmosphere, but it's not usable for these plants. Nitrogen is important, or I should say nitrogen is found in In proteins, in the amino acids, we have nitrogen. And if you remember DNA, the nitrogenous bases, adenine, thymine, cytosine, guanine. So nitrogen is found in DNA, nitrogen is found in proteins. So if you are a plant that can acquire some sort of protein source, nucleic acid source, that's going to give you that vital nutrient that you're lacking. And again, insects, flies, and spiders, and other little creatures like that serve as the nutrient source for these predatory plants. So again, different strategies for trapping, for sticking, for enclosing, for acquiring their insect prey, right? This is the sundew, which uses little sticky traps. So this little ant has kind of crawled upon these sticky traps. The more it struggles, the more it gets sort of stuck. Imagine sort of suffocating in syrup. You get all full of syrup, you suffocate, you die. And then basically that plant can start to digest the nitrogen out of that prey item. The Venus flytrap. Venus flytrap is a different, very dynamic type of trap. It actually has sensory little hairs, if you want to call them. So Venus flytraps utilizing the water pressure, being able to utilize sensory information to trap these insects. And I'll upload a video that kind of elaborates a little bit more on these as well. So yeah, that's a very quick synopsis on desert plants, on biochemicals, and now on predatory plants. So with this, you should have all of the information that you need to complete your exam now, right? So I'll give you a time to soak all that in, and keep an eye out for the accessory videos that are going to complement these lectures, and do well on the exam. And I'll be maybe answering questions on email or trying to set up live office hours as well. So y'all have a good one, and I'll see you next time.